So yeah, if you can just tell me first off your name and the organization.
My name is Christine Newman Ortiz, and I'm the Executive Director of Voces de la Frontera from Wisconsin.
How's the sound? Just a little bit about your background and sort of how you first got involved in community organizing.
Let's see, I first got involved in community organizing would be, I consider late in life, in the 1980s when I came to UW-Madison. And UW-Madison has a very rich culture of student organizing and community organizing. And it was really the first opportunity that I had to experience collective action, planning, and also really opportunities for political discussion around really having an analysis of where a lot of these problems came from. And for me, really looking at the dynamic of both race and class was very important to really see how all these different movements are really intertwined, and to get involved and see, and feel the power of our collective efforts.
Great. And you said you spent some time in Texas doing work, and sort of that's where Voces first began. Can you talk a little bit about what was the impetus for you to start the organization?
Yeah, the organization started in really in 1993, and it became more concrete in 1994. At that time, I was living in Austin, Texas, and myself and some other activists decided to produce a paper called Voces de la Frontera, an organization, and we were part of the Coalition for Justice in the Maquiladoras, and were able to support workers in the maquiladora industry in Mexico or along the border, Texas border, that had formed worker centers, and as a means to be able to fight for independent unions, better neighborhood conditions. And so it was really that experience at the time of the signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement that Voces really formed, and Voces de la Frontera was a reference to workers at these multinational corporations, and then the intention was really to raise awareness and solidarity.
Great. So you eventually found your way back to Wisconsin, and what is it about Wisconsin? We've heard a lot about Wisconsin in the last year. Like, what is it that makes it a place that for you is great to be involved in organizing?
I love Wisconsin. I love Wisconsin because it was a sharp contrast to some of my places that I'd lived before. Right before then, I'd lived for 4 years, I'd lived in Alabama and in Texas. And really the tradition of trade unionism was a lot weaker in those states. And that there's a very progressive tradition in Wisconsin, historically higher numbers of union families. And despite the hardships that Wisconsin faces, and the city of Milwaukee in particular, it was like a breath of fresh air that, people have that history, and it's a living history. It's a family history, generational history, not that long ago. And so it's really kind of part of the social fabric. It's part of who people are, and I feel like Milwaukee has a tremendous tradition, and that we draw from, and I feel like that's a lot of potential.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about some of the sort of big victories or good things, positive things that have happened related to the work of your organization and sort of the broader immigrant rights and progressive movement over the last few years?
Yes, I think in terms of the victories that we've had, I think one of them has been the ability to really sustain mass participation. That's one of the things that Voces is most recognized for. And it really started in 2006, and we, as part of the national wave of immigrant rights protests and strikes against Congressman Sensenbrenner's H.R. 4437. But in Wisconsin, we really sustained that mass level of participation every year since on May Day. And so just the level of support that's been sustained, I think, has been very powerful. In 2009, we were able to win in-state tuition rights in our state after 10 years of struggle, as part of actually really a progressive series of reforms that were the culmination of really a statewide coordinated effort with voices representing the immigrant constituency really at the table. And so it was very exciting. I mean, some of the other reforms included the home health care industry, being statewide, winning the ability to be represented. There were LGBT rights that were achieved as well. So it was a very across the board, a lot of good gains. Obviously, what was heartbreaking was the 2010 elections, which I think the scale of the Wisconsin is traditionally a swing state that veered sharply in one direction, and it really is a reaction to disappointment at the national level, and particularly around the state of the economy and what was really done to address that it wasn't, not enough was done to address the unemployment and the economic crisis, and for working people. And so there was a real backlash and some dissatisfaction, I think, from traditional voters who, and so as a consequence, we knew that bad things would come. And certainly we lost in-state tuition rights after having it there for just 2 years. And there was really an assault, and really unprecedented assault in terms of all-out attack on public employees' right to be represented, which I think that did take everyone by surprise, and just dramatic cuts to public education, health care, immigrant rights, all of it was really in a very aggressive way into the democratic process itself. And I think what's been very exciting has been that, has really been the rank and file uprising, which has involved hundreds of thousands of people, and it's been a statewide phenomena, and that voices, in a partnership with the labor unions there, who have really worked together to give the immigrant rights movement a platform, and obviously not just to reach a lot of rank and file workers, but obviously as voices ourselves, really mobilized significantly and strongly in solidarity with public employees' right to be represented. And obviously it's something that affects all of us. But it's been, I think that spirit of mass resistance has been heartwarming. Afterwards, we had the May Day March, and it was the first joint, in a true partnership, really sponsorship of the unions and voices representing the immigrant community that turned out. We had 100,000 people there. Richard Trumka came to speak. So it was something that organized around a message of solidarity and opposition to a pending Arizona copycat bill in the state legislature. So it's, I think it's really being able to rise to the occasion that has been heartwarming, and I am very optimistic about the future. Not that it's going to come easy, but I think if we continue to do the kind of on-the-ground organizing and engaging people and directing that anger in the appropriate direction, I think we've seen that, and I think it's something that is inspiring and that we have to continue to nurture and grow.
That's great. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about the hope piece later, but we don't. But I wanted to kind of back up a little bit and talk just about how you first came in contact with the Center for Community Change, with our organization, and in particular with the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, and sort of how that came about and the role that you saw CCC playing in the building of that.
Sure. Should I go ahead then? Okay. Voices was the first time we connected up with the Center for Community Change was really through the whole fight in terms of welfare rights. It was in the 1990s, late 1990s, under the Clinton administration, where they were making dramatic cuts to welfare rights, and one of them, which included denying legal immigrant access to, or creating greater restrictions for welfare benefits. And so it was really as kind of as a subcommittee to the whole welfare rights fight that I had the first opportunity to meet other immigrant rights organizations around the country. I know at the table there, for instance, was Chirla. So there was other groups that formed this subcommittee. And out of that, we became the Immigrant Organizing Committee and eventually the Fair Immigration Reform Movement, which has represented the field as part of the larger umbrella entity, Reform Immigration for America. And so it's definitely been a journey, and I think there's no question that there's been progress, and that Center for Community Change has been critical in building the infrastructure of this national movement to be able to simply financially support groups to come together, to learn from each other, to have a common agenda in the immigrant rights fight. And that's been extremely fruitful and necessary, and that we've had the capacity to, again, organize at mass scale, to negotiate at a national level. And it's something that I know for a fact was needed. I had some conversations with our congressional representative, and their impression was that the immigrant rights movement many years ago was fractured. Whether that's true or not, that was their impression. And I think there is no question that there has been a greater, not that everyone's always in agreement, but I think by and large there's been a tremendous level of coordination and a stronger national movement as a result.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I know there's, in terms of like the role of sort of local or state level organizations versus national groups like CCC that have their base here in Washington D.C. Like, how do you see the role of CCC as sort of the, you know, being here where the policy is being made, and someone like Deepak who's you know, interacting to some extent with some of the politicians? What is the importance of that role that a national organization can play in a coalition like this?
I think one of the strengths of the Center for Community Change has been that it has been able to be able to communicate our demands in kind of the circle of influence that is just also a political reality in Washington, D.C., but at the same time really that is reflective of the field, you know, of what it is that we're asking for. And I think the actions that we've taken in terms of the civil disobedience actions really has really meant that that the center and Deepak himself, who has also been arrested, are willing to burn some bridges if necessary. We haven't had to burn bridges, but it shows the seriousness that it's not just about access, that it is about demands and people willing to make sacrifices and push harder. So I think we have a ways to go, but I think those partnerships and coordination have been, and the support for that have been absolutely essential. I mean, I think the other aspect that the center has been very helpful with has been in terms of I know developing a electoral, helping C3 organizations develop a C4 arm that can then also play a much more engaged role in elections with our communities, which often ask for that, need that level of clarity in terms of who's on our side and who isn't, and really directing resources to the field.
Yeah. So I mean, it seems like right now is sort of a time in which there are a lot of opportunities for the progressive movement, but it's also, as you were talking about, a really kind of tough moment in which the right has been on the attack and has won some victories and is working to build on those through continuing to roll back state budgets and national budget and whatnot. And so, just wondering, like, what based on some of the opportunities that are out there, but the real challenges that exist, like what you see as some of the biggest challenges, and how we as a progressive movement are gonna tackle those challenges in the years to come.
I think there's always 20/20 hindsight, and I would say that in Wisconsin, obviously that's the state I'm from, so I can speak to, but everything was happening very quickly because this right-wing agenda, part of what they do is while they were able to secure power, they know obviously because of the recall elections and so forth, they're doing everything they can to hang on to it and get as much out of it as they can in the time that they have. And so I think the lessons learned there are that long-term alliances on the ground matter, because we definitely, the fact that we had coordinated at a state level, partners knew each other, community groups knew labor union partners, that those alliances were already there, whether that was coordination around electoral work or specific support around specific campaigns. Some of those relationships were already there, and I think that's important when there is a crisis to be able to draw on that. And I think in 20/20 hindsight, one of the things that is important for other states and Wisconsin as well is that it's really measuring different organizations' capacity. So I think with the recall elections, one of the critiques has been, one of the debates in Wisconsin has been, well, we shouldn't have put so much money into the recall election, even though it was successful in the sense that the state legislative margin narrowed, and certainly there is one Republican that broke away. So in a real way, it was I think progress, but a tough fight, and it did take a lot of resources. And so some folks have said, well, we shouldn't have done that at all and focused more on the grassroots peace, engagement, and I feel like the truth is really in the middle, in the sense that there continued to be state coordination in the field, but I think the types of strategies that were used by, in terms of civil disobedience tactics, for instance, VOSES was involved in individuals of VOSES and rank and file union members and leaders in the community were involved in a civil disobedience action at the Joint Finance Committee to prevent this horrible state budget from going through. And it happened at a bad time in the summer. A lot of the students were gone, but there was an opportunity to really bottleneck that process. There was kind of a larger entity that also did a number of actions at the state capitol following kind of that mass wave. And I think there needs to be kind of like an orchestra so that we can make sure that we're sustaining the diligence and discipline and dedication and resources, if need be, that goes into electoral work, that also goes into the on-the-ground organizing for some of these much more aggressive actions that also need to be taken in desperate times, call for desperate actions. And these are peaceful actions, and but we need them. And I think that would be, I think in 20/20 hindsight, one lesson to take away, and boldness, and just greater, we need to continue to sustain this kind of, there is a new consciousness that's occurred, and it will continue to grow given in the aftermath of these kind of severe cuts. And so we have to engage people around their needs and continue to put people into motion and provide them an opportunity to be able to define that struggle. And so I think that has to continue, the kind of very, very grassroots involvement.
Yeah.